Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the second episode of the Classy Room podcast. Today, we're discussing supplies. From staplers to lunch meals and Chromebooks, how do the highest, lowest, and middle ranked funding counties stack up against one another? And how can these funding inequalities be changed for the future to provide all students equitable supplies and opportunities for success? To get started, the main supply aspects we'll be discussing are textbook, food services, special education equipment, and facilities and technologies. With the spread of COVID-19, many schools have been forced to switch to online learning. Charles County, a more middle-funded county, saw 7.7% in technology and supply spending from 2021 to 2022. In 2022, they're now allocating $16 million to supplies and technology alone. Kent County, on the other hand, allocated $241,000 to COVID-related technology increases for the fiscal year. This difference in cost may seem very broad, but when put into perspective, Charles County has 26,000 students enrolled, while Kent County only has 1.9 thousand students. This huge difference in students explains such a difference in technology spending, and you can see that across the board with different aspects of supply spending.
Mm.
Question for you guys. How do you think your respective schools and counties handled COVID? And did you really see any technology changes within your county or like school system because of COVID? For me, I think COVID definitely gave everyone got a new laptop. Like the county was buying
Really?
yes,
Everyone?
yeah. Everyone
That's
got a
kind of
laptop.
crazy.
Everyone got a laptop. I mean, it wasn't like a fancy laptop. It was just a laptop.
Mhm.
Like it wasn't like a MacBook. It was just like I think a
Did you
Chromebook.
guys have laptops beforehand?
No. We did not have
Okay.
laptops before, so it was like new and they were all fancy. But everyone got like, oops, something just fell. But all our laptops were like brand new and everyone got one. And if you broke it, you would have to return it. But I think like technology
Did you have to
wise,
pay insurance on them?
no, we didn't have to pay
Like,
anything.
okay.
I mean, I'm assuming probably the county did, but we didn't. And I
Mhm.
think that otherwise, I obviously the county had to pay for like technology, like Zoom. They had to pay for
Mhm.
Microsoft for everyone to use. They had to pay for the Zoom premium for everyone to use. But I mean, other than that, I can't think of anything else they spent money on. I think the laptops was the only thing.
Oh,
But now what's interesting is they're still doing that. Like everyone, like since then, there are still laptops being used every day at school. Like they're not getting rid of them. Like it's like a thing to stay, which I think is really interesting.
Wait, so
yeah.
after you graduated, did you have to return them, or did like
Yeah,
the teacher
yeah.
give them?
You have
Yeah.
to return it.
That was the
And
same
yeah,
thing
that
with
makes sense.
us.
It makes sense that they were like just kind of reusing the same ones until
Mhm.
if they
Yeah.
had them, might
That's
as
so
well use them.
interesting because, sorry, because like my school did not do anything. Like,
Really?
I know that I know that they provided laptops for students who
Where,
like didn't have access to devices.
Elliot, where'd
But
you go to school
wait,
before?
what'd you say? Montgomery County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like they didn't do anything else differently. Like we all just used our own
Dang.
laptops and we didn't even have like Microsoft Word. We just
Weird.
everything was the
So
same.
it was just Google and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you guys
Okay.
use
Because I
Google
mean,
Meet or whatever? Because we use Zoom.
What'd you say?
Did you guys use Google Meets or whatever it
No,
was?
we use Zoom, so they probably paid for that one, but
okay.
that's like all that
Did they have
they
any?
did differently.
Were there any like, um, what did they do for people that maybe didn't have laptops? They're just like, all right, tough. Figure it out.
No, for them they did like provide
Okay. Okay.
stuff,
That makes sense.
but it wasn't like none of the people I knew did. And like I know there were people who did, but
Mm.
otherwise, yeah, there was nothing.
Mm. What about you, Ryan?
I mean, so to clarify, just I went to a private school in Baltimore County,
Oh,
so
yes.
so like we all had laptops who went there, so like that wasn't the issue. Like, so they had these like Zoom options where essentially they had these monitors hooked up with cameras and stuff. So if like you
Ah.
weren't comfortable going, you could zoom in virtually to like all the
Oh,
classes,
yes.
at least
Mhm.
the year, like my senior year when everything was really bad. Because we just everybody was virtual end of junior year when it first started. But then senior year, like people were allowed to go back in person if you were comfortable with that, but they had a mask mandate and like
Mhm.
they had like those plastic dividers for like lunches and stuff. Like most people still just ate outside for the most part. But
Interesting.
yeah.
How many people were in your school? Like, out of
Uh,
curiosity. Do you know?
Actually, I looked up. Funnily enough, looked it up a little bit earlier. Like, and the current enrollment is 751.
Okay, so it's smaller than.
Yeah.
It was for 9 through 12.
Actually, I don't know if that 751 applies to like because the school goes from K to 12. I don't know if that 751 was the.
Oh my
I
God.
think that might be the whole school.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
It was cool. It is actually really intriguing hearing you guys talk about that because I'm hearing like little snippets of stuff that that my school did in New York. And so just to clarify, I'm from Westchester County in New York State. And we I think we didn't get new laptops, but there had been like Chromebooks, like students had Chromebooks beforehand. And so there wasn't really a need to like give everyone new laptops and stuff. But we had used like almost all Google stuff, so Google Classroom, Google Drive, stuff like that. And we used some teachers would use Zoom, and then other teachers would use Google Meet. Like my physics class was Google Meet, my economics class was Google Meet, and like all the others were Zoom. And so it was kind of janky like that. And I don't know why they did that. What's up?
Yeah, that's annoying. Like having to switch back and forth, like some using Google and some using Zoom.
Yeah.
That
I
is
mean,
annoying.
and Google Meet's like interface is kind of iffy compared to Zoom. I don't like it as much. But yeah, there was I forget exactly when we went fully online, but we also were able to come back into school, I think, April 10th, if I have that right. I don't know if I have that.
School like at all. Like they were
Our
like,
senior year at least.
yeah. Well, for seniors like graduate early. Like we're done with school in May instead of like June. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
We like so
Yeah.
yeah, our school. So I think our last day was like May 28th, and then we graduated June 2nd. So for us, at least, that was like the first stage of people going back. So only like certain qualifying groups were allowed to go back. Like if you played a sport, because the county sports has started up again. If you played a sport, if you were in a certain club, or like you had signed up early enough, you were allowed to go back. So we were like, not everyone went at once. So like I went back probably like 3 days of my entire senior year in person, but everything else was online. But it was funny because junior year, we didn't have Zoom at all. Everything was over like Microsoft Teams. So we could just do school whenever we wanted. They just gave us assignments and you could do it at like any time. You didn't have to go to class. Like there was no class, which was really nice.
Did they give you laptops like junior year or senior
No,
year?
not until senior year. So people who were like, that was like a problem junior year because I remember people were like, tough luck. Like if you don't have, because at that point junior, our grades turned from A through F to pass fail.
Pass fail.
So if you weren't actually doing the work, it didn't matter that much. To be honest, as long as you like already had a good grade in the class generally. Well, it also depended on your class, but like they had some laptops, but not everyone was able to get one because like we had already been starting to use laptops before like school started, like before COVID happened. Like we had already had some county laptops, but not enough to like give every single student one at all. So after like junior year, like the summer between junior and senior year, they bought like so many. Because I remember I was helping, like I was doing some volunteer work at the county, and I was like helping sort books for like donations to to libraries and stuff. And they just had stacks of laptops in this like warehouse that we were in. It was kind of crazy. It was just like pallets of just laptops. Yeah. So before that,
that's so interesting.
Yeah. Elliot, I feel like your situation is odd. They really just said like, if you don't, just like on your own laptop.
Like we had Chromebooks at school during the like when we were in person, but it was like only for certain classes. We didn't really use them. But it was interesting, like Sean, it sounded like your school was kind of similar, like in person with the Chromebooks. But it's like it's always interesting to like see other states too, because I know like when I went to school in California, they gave us like individual iPads to like take home and like basically have until the end of the school year. So I was just like wondering how, COVID was for them, but I know that's like off topic. Yeah.
I know what you mean though. Like there's a private school down where I live in like Southern Maryland. It's called Riken, like St. Mary's Riken. And they had iPads like way before COVID. They've always had iPads. Everyone got an iPad and like an Apple Pencil for their homework. So I'm also like, I understand what you mean. Like I wonder how it affected them.
Wait, iPads?
Yeah, they had like big, like the big iPads.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it was also private school. So they're like paying like.
Oh, that's true.
iPads.
That's true.
Yeah, it's like part of.
No, in California, we did not pay for them. Like, it was in starting elementary school until junior high and then high school.
What?
I would not trust elementary schools with any technology ever.
Facts. Okay, well those were some very, I feel like those are all like, I feel like it's cool that we all had different answers, but kind of switch gears. Today we're gonna get into today's sponsorship. So today's episode is sponsored by the University of Maryland Model United Nations Club and the Maryland International Relations Association. Myra is currently looking for new members to join the association and to help fundraise for future Model UN competitions. The Maryland Model UN Club is actually ranked as part of the top 25 public universities nationally in for Model United Nations. Just to say that. So come to the Myra meetings every Tuesday at 5 in the Art and Social Building and have fun talking about all things international relations and politics. So anyway, moving on. So
awesome. Go support MUN, everyone.
Everyone go support MUN. To get an interesting statistic, like to throw it out there. So the selected financial data of Maryland Public Schools from 2018 to 2019, it shows data on how much each county spends per student, so like per pupil data, rather than how much a county is spending just on an entire, like how much they're spending on supplies total. Because if you're looking at that, you're seeing certain counties are going to be way more funded. Like, for example, if you're looking at like Prince George's County, which has like some of the highest like amount of students in the
population. Is wild.
They spent like $21 million on textbooks and instructional material last year. So in 2022, that's what they were approved to spend for this school year. But Kent County is only spending like $199,000. So like obviously there's a huge difference. But if we're looking at just per student, it's actually interesting to look at like what the average is and what different states are spending. So if you're looking at the state average is around $14,000 per student I don't know if it's per year, if it's over the lifetime that the student is in the county like school system, like,
which in and of itself, sorry to interrupt, a lot of money. is really interesting to think about, because I don't know, I never looked into like the per pupil spending for different schools, but to think that, I don't know, it kind of puts into perspective a little bit how much money is spent on each student in schooling. Yeah,
it's like you can't buy education, but you kind of can. Like you can't, like it's like you can buy a person, but you're kind of like you're spending a certain amount of money for that kid to have instructional like education from like K through 12. Anyway,
also
but
important to note here, I'm pretty sure also that Prince George's County has about 196 active schools, whereas Kent County only has 5 active schools.
Yeah,
so that's another big thing. That's true.
Yeah, I feel like it's always interesting. Where I'm from, we only have like 7 high schools, but like talking to people in like bigger counties in Maryland, they have like, I don't know, like 20 something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Too many. I'm like, how do y'all have so many kids? It's like crazy. But so I was looking at like the different statistics. So the state average being around 14,000. So the counties I was talking about earlier, Charles spends a little bit under at 13.5 thousand. Prince George's County is like right on par at 14.5, and Kent County is at 14.9 thousand, which is interesting because I'm wondering if like since they have so few students, they're able to allocate more money per student because they don't have to like spread their funding thinner. Because if you're looking at like some of the higher like, well, it's like weird, some of the counties like St. Mary's County, that's like southern Maryland, they're only spending 12.7 thousand per student, but they have like a pretty average amount of students, like about the same as Charles County, if not a little bit less. So it's like I'm wondering why their funding is so different than other counties and how they're able to spend more or less. And I'm thinking it might have something to do with what the state is seeing out of that county. Like if you're seeing a county where they have a higher graduation rate, higher test scores, higher, I don't know, teacher pay,
That's really
they're gonna
interesting.
see
Yeah.
more or less funding coming their way. And I don't want to be like, as someone who's from the area, I would say there's not a lot coming out of St. Mary's County, because St. Mary's County is a lot of like farmers, farmland. You're not gonna see like tons of crazy stuff going on down there. Not what you're seeing in like at least the bigger counties, in my opinion, with way more kids who have like, I think just a little bit more funding than St. Mary's. So I'm wondering how they're affected. And I just think it's really interesting to look at these. And I said that I think that even though some counties are allocating and spending more money on different areas in a different way, the per pupil cost does not match up with the highest funded counties, which is like, where's the money going? But at the same time,
Yeah.
there's like plenty of places they can go. Like teacher salary always needs to be higher. Like in my case, at least, like textbook, supplies, food, that's all going to depend on like how many kids are in the county and stuff.
Mhm.
So it's all very like circumstantial, I think, in what it affects. At least I have a question.
Okay.
Do you think the different costs have an effect on the education and quality of students in each county? And then like, what do you guys think could be done to possibly like change the cost so that all students are equal? Because I think the whole like idea is that all students should equally be
Wait,
having the
sorry.
same amount.
Quick clarification. Do you mean like cost or spending?
The different spendings, yes, that's what I meant. Like the different per pupil cost has an
Mhm.
effect on like the actual quality of education for those kids. Because I'm like, if St. Mary's County has such a low per pupil cost, are those kids getting the same education they're getting at Worcester County, which has the highest per pupil cost, where they're paying
Mhm.
upwards of $17,000 per student? That's a whole like
Yeah.
$5,000 difference. Like, is that difference really making a difference in that kid's education?
I think so. I mean, especially with COVID coming down, like as we were all talking about with technology, if I mean the difference in the level of technology available to students to learn effectively or as effectively as possible online and remotely is probably I don't know, I don't want to say vastly different, but probably different to a certain degree, with a $5,000 difference per pupil.
Mhm.
There's also the idea of are there updated textbooks? Like textbooks are the newer textbooks have the correct information or more updated information or more relevant information. And I imagine there's also various other aspects of the supply subtopic that increased funding per pupil would have an impact on.
Especially,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I was
Sorry.
looking at like, you're good. I was looking at the cost of like special education equipment for different counties. And it was interesting like to see how big of a difference like there was. Like PG County is spending $325 million for special education funding, while Kent County is only spend 801,000. But I'm like, since they have a smaller population, they're probably gonna have a smaller special education population. But I'm like, it's just crazy because I'm like, are those kids getting any difference in how they're like going up, like learning through school, how they're being treated in school and stuff like that, just based upon like funding cost and everything like that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like this per pupil, I don't know if this takes into account like special education students who might need more funding just for helping them get the kind of education that they can like they deserve and that they're able to like get in their county.
I think also like
Yeah, I think
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
you can go.
All right. So I think an important thing to notice here or remember with this topic is that like yes, like the quantity of money is important, but also like just throwing money at something isn't necessarily going to be the best solution. Like spending money wisely and like prudently, like efficiently really, is kind of an important metric too. Because like if you spend that 12,000 more efficiently, the students might get a better education than just like even with the 17,000 type of thing.
Yeah,
If that
that
makes
is
sense.
true. And that thought or that idea just made me think of like, I wonder if since they have the money to spend, if they're spending it a bit more willy nilly than as opposed to the 12,000 per student. whose county might be like, I don't know, a bit smarter with it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Elia, do you
But,
want
Yeah,
Elia?
that was like the point that I was also gonna like touch on, because like I mentioned that my California school like gave us iPads, and while that is like could be a good thing, I don't think they spent it wisely, because other things could have used a lot of money that they
Mm.
didn't fund and spend money on, and instead they gave like kids iPads, which were actually like a big distraction
We all know
for
how
us.
iPad
Like,
kids turn out.
yeah, exactly. So like it was I think it's really important to like pay attention to where they actually spend the money and like what would actually be good for the students.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anyone have any final thoughts?
I mean, I'm not sure how much this is exactly going to be relevant to this conversation, but also like something to consider is like how much, for example, like of the students would be on things like with requiring like the free meal programs or things like that, where it's like things that like will increase the spending per student that aren't necessarily related. Like they help the education and help supplement it, but they're not necessarily directly related to education costs. So
Yeah.
that may also increase some numbers.
Yeah, I was looking at like the Charles County spending for last year and what you were saying about the free meal cost, because like the county also has to make money to be able to spend money, because not all of their money for spending is going to come from the state, like directly, like the state Board of Education. But I was looking at how like at least Charles County had like a 6% deficit last year in like making like revenue because of the free meal program, because they had to give kids free meals because of COVID. So I was like, I wonder how that'll affect like their funding moving forward, like where that lack of money is going to be seen, especially. But I also think that free meal, like I really like that program. I think it should be one that continued. And I think if the county is able to keep moving forward, like if any county is able to keep moving forward with that kind of deficit and still like provide students like what they need even with the deficit, I don't see a reason why free meals should be stopped. Like I can't find a reason, in my opinion.
And while we're on that topic, an interesting statistic that I came across while looking at the topic was that in I think it was in April and May 2020, there was compared to earlier that year, there was a 71% decrease in the total number of breakfast and lunch meals served, and a 58% decrease in the number of free or reduced price breakfast and lunch meals served in Maryland schools. And I totally agree with that. With that being a super important program that needs to be kept up, especially for people during a pandemic, where people that maybe, I guess, in not so good financial situations, who are already struggling, a pandemic is dropped on their head, and they don't have as ease of access to food, which is which is like absolutely ridiculous. And so that is definitely a necessity.
Yeah, I think that like I just see no reason for it to stop. I'm like, based upon how it's been going now, and like at least what I've seen, it's given a lot of students like an ability to have like a meal even when they're at home, because a lot of times kids' parents are like working either from home or out like at their job, so they're not going to always have like somebody to make them lunch or make them breakfast or dinner. So I think that like the county providing that is really something that should continue. So I think that we covered a lot today, and I'm like really glad we all got to talk about this topic. And
Absolutely.
I'm excited to see everybody in the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.